Welcome to the Unscripted SEO Interview Podcast. Yes, it's 100% unscripted, 100% unrehearsed, 100% unedited, and 100% real. I'm your host, Mark A Preston, and my guest today is somebody that I've known for quite a number of years. Somebody that has what I consider one of the best SEO mindsets in the industry, and somebody I'm proud to have known all these years. It's none other than the Managing Director of Digitaloft. Please welcome James Brockbank.
Hi Mark, how are we doing? Thank you for having me on. And yeah, as you say, I think we've known each other a long time now, fellow Lancashire people and straight talking Northerners. And yeah, really excited to have a chat and share my take on SEO, digital PR, everything that's wrong with the world that we work in.
We haven't got that long.
No, I know we haven't, but we can have a good try, can't we?
Yeah. Now, for the people watching this and listening to this who doesn't understand your background, could you give us like a whirlwind tour of when you started in the industry, what you were doing then, and where you are now and how you got there?
Yeah, I've been doing SEO for it'll be 15 years this year. So I got into it mid to end 2009. And my God, it was all very, very different back then. I started out as an agency in a junior role, and we were buying links from India, spamming title tags, no consideration for content quality. And it worked. And I think, from there, I was there 4 years until really Penguin and Panda hit. And I think, from there, I was a bit embarrassed to do SEO the way that most people were doing SEO back then. It was, I think Penguin was a wake-up call to a lot of people. And I think certainly the way I'd been taught SEO was that it's not manipulative. These things are fine because they work. If they didn't work, and then, if they weren't right, then they wouldn't work. But I think, Penguin was the wake-up call. And where I got to after that was the frustration that everyone went from one bad tactic to another. When I started out in SEO, most agencies were buying private blog network links from India, from overseas. It was pure spam. They then moved to guest posting, and I call it guest posting as we all did, but it was just writing bullshit 200-300 word blog posts with an exact match anchor text link and going, this is link building. And I didn't fall out of love with the industry and what we do. I've loved SEO and the buzz around ranking a website, driving growth, having an impact on other people's businesses since the day I got into it. But what I fell out of love with was the reputation SEO had, and the fact that most SEOs back then went from one manipulative tactic to another. There was no consideration for content quality. There was no consideration for, should you be earning these links? Do you have the right to rank? And I think, you mentioned, Mark, that, we've always aligned on mindset. And I think, my mindset since probably 2012, 2013 has been that SEO should have never been a manipulative tactic. It was for a long time. I think even to this day, there are business owners that have been stung 10, 12 years ago that had their businesses wiped out by Penguin. And in their mind, were what did that article call? There's a bunch of content goblins and fraudsters. It's should have never been that way. SEO is it's a tactic to increase visibility of a site. It's not it should never be cheating the system. And I think, when I started out in SEO, I was always taught that SEO is about cheating the system. And I think, where I got to launching my own agency from is I just didn't have the confidence that certainly when did I start the agency? 2013, start of 2014. I didn't have the confidence that a lot of other agencies, certainly, don't forget this was a pre-COVID world. I grew up in Lancaster, certainly in that part of the Northwest, I had kids by then. I had no desire to be traveling on the train to Manchester every day. We were all office based. So I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's go on my own. We then, as an agency, I founded Digitaloft in end of 2013, which means we come on to 11 years this year. Started out freelancing on my own. And by 2015, we were doing what we now call digital PR. One of the things I'm very proud to say is that we were doing digital PR long before it was called digital PR. We called it content-led link building, content marketing, ego bait, all these different names that it had for a while. We were effectively using content in one way or another to earn links. And I think, if you look back at what I did, what we did as an agency in 2015 to build links, it's not what we did today. Would we do, are some of the things we did back then embarrassing? Yes, but actually it was a damn sight better than what most people were doing. We got into the routine of infographics, of content that was maybe produced more to earn links than build a reputation. But this was before we were, yes, we heard a little bit about EAT and the quality rating guidelines. I think, certainly back in 2014, 2015, I was of the mindset that EA was complete bullshit. How can Google actually, how can Google determine these things? And I think back then it was probably the right viewpoint to have. And I think digital PR, my take was when everybody's buying links or building links on private blog networks, any link from an authority source, from the Daily Telegraph, from the Daily Mail, is a better link than what competitors are doing. And again, it worked. But I think, where we are today, which is, to me, our PR team alone is 50 people plus. I think we're one of the largest digital PR team, specialist digital PR teams in the UK right now. And it's a million miles from what we did back then. Now we're very, very much on leveraging digital PR to not just build links, but to demonstrate and align with the principles of EEAT to build a brand's reputation. And, as a whirlwind tour, over the past 15 years, I've done tech SEO, I've done content marketing, I've done digital PR, I've done strategy. I would say, and I'm still very hands-on. I will never, whilst I'm maybe not directly working on client accounts day in, day out, staying at the forefront of what's working in SEO and digital PR right now is something I will always do. I've no desire to be hands-off. What I love doing is ranking websites on Google, whether that's what worked 10 years ago, whether that's what works today, whether that's figuring out what's going to work in 10 years' time. And yeah, it's straight talking bullshit-free SEO, and I think, we're in an industry where the industry saw rapid growth in COVID. And, we saw so many people's sites decimated last year by the helpful content update because they were following misinformation. They were following advice on Twitter, on social media, that anyone with a bit of experience could go, yeah, it might work for you for 3 months, for 6 months. You ain't got a sustainable business. And I think, we come on to today, if you want to succeed with organic search, yeah, you won't, every single day you see people on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now, talking about the quality of the SERPs, and I think we're very, very well timed here, Mark, given Google's core algorithm update announcement yesterday. I've got lots of thoughts on that. But I think, where we get, we've spent the last, 6-7 months with SEOs, webmasters, ripping apart the quality of the SERPs. But I think, half of that is them going, okay, well, why are brands ranking? Why have these small niche, I hate the term niche sites, but let's just use it. Why have these specialist sites or these smaller sites been hit and the big brands haven't? It's reputation. And I think, if we talk about, we can talk about the fine elements of EEAT all day long. It is reputation. And a lot of businesses have tried to fake it by demonstrating EEAT or demonstrating a reputation that they haven't built. You build your reputation, then you demonstrate it. And, I think we can overthink EEAT, but actually when you align with this mindset of how do I positively build a reputation and make people trust me, the big brands that have been winning on the SERPs for the last however many years, it's not a new thing that people are saying brands have an unfair advantage, but people trust them. And I think, a great, I've been running over the past few weeks internally with our PR teams, a sort of two-hour intensive interactive training course on EEAT to keep our team at the forefront of what we're seeing happening here. And one of the examples I'm giving in that is forget Google for a minute, forget the web. If you're down the pub with your mates and you're looking for a recommendation on a holiday destination, are you going to trust your mate who goes, oh yeah, I visited so-and-so last year. We really enjoyed this restaurant. This was a great thing to do. Or the guy who goes, or the woman who goes, how about there? I've heard that's pretty good. You're buying a house and you're looking for a mortgage broker. You would expect that mortgage broker to have formal expertise, qualifications, accreditations. So why are we all so shocked that the same expectations are now being upheld online? It's, why would you trust a recommendation from someone who hasn't been there, done that, experienced something? And it still baffles me that the concept of EEAT to so many people seems so hard to grasp. Because take it into an offline concept, and it's so fucking easy to get your head around. And it's because we overthink it. We think on it oh, well, do we need to, we need to build author pages. You need to build your reputation. And I think, as SEO, we've all fallen into this trap of thinking, oh, what do I do here? How can I quickly you can't quickly build your reputation. Build your reputation, build a brand. Whether we talk about, when people talk about building a brand, Carrie Rose has been talking about this for years. Build your brand first, and then everything else falls into place. You can't build a brand overnight. You can't build a brand or build a reputation. Think about them in the same way. You can't do that overnight. It takes years. You can't do that by building author pages. You can't do that by adding reviewed by so-and-so. If you build your reputation first, demonstrating it becomes really, really easy. But if you haven't built it, you've nothing to demonstrate. And I think one of the big things that we have here is digital PR is one of the tactics that as marketers, as search marketers, we can leverage to build that reputation. EEAT to me, it's there in the quality rater guidelines that it is not just what you say about yourselves. It is what other people say. I think we were discussing this on Twitter last week, weren't we, Mark? It's not just what you say. You can say anything about yourself, but getting other people to say it, that's your reputation. And I think that's where we are. We need to stop overcomplicating these concepts, looking for things that we can do to take a shortcut. Google is closing the loopholes. The shortcuts that once existed are quickly disappearing. Yes, there will always be ways. We only have to look at parasite SEO. Don't get me wrong. There are people making an awful lot of money from that, but those people know it ain't going to last forever. And I think that's the difference. And I think where we are as an industry, we have a responsibility for people getting into the industry. Have I had sites that were absolutely torn up by the helpful content update? Yes. But they were never, they should have never ranked. So some sites. I've had sites that were heavily rewarded by the helpful content update. And I think I've always viewed things as an SEO, I have a responsibility for running an agency that's doing SEO work for clients, to have firsthand, ironic what I'm about to say, to have firsthand experience of what works and what doesn't work. I've been doing this long enough to be aware of the risks. Now, if I go and I will be very open, I have project sites of my own that are pure AI content, unedited, pure AI content on expired domain names. I'm fully aware of the risks. Would I ever use those tactics for a client? Not a chance, because actually, to me, they are, above anything else, they are research projects. And that site in question, which ironically is one of the ones that performed really well in the helpful content update. Why did I launch that as a test project? There's something like 250 pages-ish of AI content. Shit theme, expired domain, ranking really, really well for competitive terms. It's a research project. I know the risks. I am never, ever going to build a business or build a team of people who rely on that. And I think that's where we all started falling into traps. There were people going, I'm making 30 grand a month. You can do this too. Follow what I'm doing and use AI. Change out the brand name and publish that content 30 times. I think people were calling it like brand swapping. Takes me back to the days of article spinning in 2010, 2011. And I don't like the term black hat or grey hat. In fact, I despise the terms. And I think with experience comes a knowledge of the risks involved in something. And I don't, if there is a loophole you can exploit and the risks, fair play to you. My issue is when people are almost being tricked into thinking you can make a sustainable business from spamming like this. That's my issue with it. It's the misinformation. There's people like Charles Float, Craig Campbell, who I've got every respect for those guys. They know exactly what they're doing when they're leveraging parasite SEO to make thousands and thousands of dollars. But they're smart enough and experienced enough to know it won't work forever. That will only ever be a small proportion of their revenue. And then they'll be on to the next thing. Very smart people who know how to not game the system, but they're doubling down on something whilst it works. It doesn't take much to know that the way people started going, you can go and spin up a page on a totally irrelevant site if it has authority at the moment and suddenly rank for these high-paying affiliate terms. Google was going to come down on that. And I think, it's expectations. And my personal viewpoint is we're many years beyond black hat, white hat. It's what's right for the situation you're in. And if it's a client who's, I don't like calling it real businesses, but you know what I mean, businesses that could exist off Google, of which an e-commerce store is one. An e-commerce store can still sell their goods if Google didn't exist. Most of these niche sites couldn't exist without Google because they were spamming. And some of us knew that. I don't have an issue with that. I think there's, I'm not talking fraudulent activity in any way, shape, or form. I'm talking maybe content that wasn't produced by experts. And I think that's the biggest thing that's changed in the last few years is the experience and the expertise parts of EEAT have become so incredibly important. And there's a fine line between spam and content that's well written, but that doesn't offer anything new. And I think that's where we are. But I think, ironically, as I say, I've got, at least one project test site that's pure AI on an expired domain that were ranking well. I have sites that were 100% human written content that saw differing levels of impact. But there's one common factor. There's no experience writing on topics for search, and I think if I think back to Penguin in 2012, I think we were all so naive to think Google will never come after manipulative link building. And I think a lot of SEOs were quite shocked when Google did. We saw a wave of manual penalties, then we saw Penguin. And I think, when we look back, the helpful content update reminds me so much of that. Some people running sites reliant on Google traffic should have seen it coming. And I think that's what I mean by bringing in your experience as an SEO. You might rank for big terms for 3 months. You might get 6 months. You might get 12 months. You might get 5 years. You might get 2 weeks. But that's when you're writing on things that you don't really have the ability or the background and reputation to write about. You take what I term a real business, and I think a great example I saw back when the helpful content update last September refreshed was, I think it was an example of, what was it, an air conditioning repair company in the US, and people were going, this content's not garbage, but it was clearly written by it wasn't professional copywritten. It was probably written by a tradesperson. And I'd be sloppy if I went and did plumbing. It's not where my skills lie. So actually, a plumber or an air conditioning installer writing content for a small air conditioning repair site, good on him. And that's the sort of thing that got rewarded. But actually, you started to look at this site. I think people were ripping it apart. I think it was Marie Haynes who first shared it or responded to it. And it made so much sense. If you are going and physically doing air conditioning repairs, simply by the nature of existing and the work you do, you are building experience. And I would assume expertise in that. Real businesses won because they weren't manipulating anything. They had no idea what EEAT was. They were just doing what they do. And I think, we have to get out of this mindset that EEAT is, for a lot of businesses, they've built the EEAT. Where marketers come in is demonstrating that, make it easy to corroborate that on page, that off page. Most real businesses have built EEAT signals. They have their accreditations, they have their experts, they have their years of experience. But most of them don't do a great job of demonstrating it. And I think that's where, you can't, thinking back to our Twitter conversation last week, you can't demonstrate something that you've not built.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there goes about 10 questions I were going to ask. But
this is like a typical catch-up of ours. We go down every rabbit hole there is.
It is, though. I see the industry totally isolated, split up into different parts. And for me, if you are working on somebody's business that's not your own, you cannot take risk with that business, because I have physically seen people lose the jobs because of SEOs taking risks.
Me too.
And
I think, I've seen it. I've seen it at all sorts of levels. And, I think the one thing that gets me is, maybe not quite as much now, but go back a few years, we had conversations with clients or prospective clients where other SEOs had ruined their business. it would have taken, I believe that almost anything like that can be turned around. It takes a lot of work, it takes time. And it's not necessarily, if I take on a recovery project that is from effectively ruining a reputation, and I'm not talking about technical issues here. I'm talking about things where their online reputation, whether that's in Google's eyes or customers, has been ruined. It takes time. I can't, in a lot of cases, turn that round in a month, 3 months. But the reality is these businesses, by the time they cycle through 2 agencies or 2 SEOs, it's too late. They've lost the business. And I think, this is where I, come into this thing of black hat versus white hat. I'll do what I want for myself on my own sites. They are not supporting anybody. I've always made a thing of, I've got test sites. I've got sites that earn differing amounts of revenue in there. And I don't think that's not a reflection. An experienced SEO, a great SEO, knows what to use when. And it comes down to what are the goals. And I think, the goals for most client businesses are sustainable growth. And once that growth is achieved, to maintain that growth. And I think, we can go into the ethics of SEO, but I think, where we are is that, you are, when you're playing with somebody else's livelihood, you have a duty to make very different decisions to the ones you make for yourself. And I think it comes back, I say it in everything to do with business. Do or say what you want, but be prepared to deal with the consequences when it goes badly. And I think that's, it's a mindset to go in with, whether you're managing people, whether you're being arrogant on social media, do and say what you want, but you're going to have to deal with the consequences afterwards. And that is the same with recommending SEO tactics. There are some SEOs who will recommend manipulative tactics to this day to clients. Just be prepared to answer some very, very tough questions and have some very tough conversations when it all goes wrong. And you've got to think long term, and I think that's always, it's the education piece working with clients as well. So, we've all been there. A client goes, we have 3 months to save this business. Nobody's saving that business in 3 months. If it is as bad as, if it's tech issues, if there's a bodged migration, of course you can. But when it's reputation based, and reputation, of course, can be manipulative links, it ain't happening. And I think, you've got a duty as an SEO to be honest and say, this ain't happening. And I think, that's where we have this almost ethical dilemma sometimes, that you might desperately want to help these people, but it's too late. And I think that's where we have a duty of education on, I still, maybe not as much as I would like to, but I still, I spend a lot of time putting content online, producing content on the grounds that I believe as an industry, we all have a place to make it better. And I think, where I genuinely don't believe that there's many people out there who are honestly trying to scam businesses and take money and not deliver. I think we're in an industry that, don't get me wrong, I am not on board, I don't believe the SEO industry could or should be regulated. I think it'd be a minefield. Who does it? What does it look like? If I'm tasked with driving growth for an e-commerce store, Mark, let's say through SEO, and you're tasked with the same thing, I can almost guarantee we're not going to take the same approach. It doesn't mean either of us is wrong, and it doesn't mean either of us won't see the growth. But how do you regulate something there's so many different paths to the same result? And, so I'm not, it comes up every year or two, doesn't it? People saying, oh, this industry needs to be regulated. I'm not on board with that. I think it'd be a backward step. I think it would be, it's easy to look on paper like you know what you're doing. But I think the best way to showcase that is to give back to the industry and educate, 15 years ago when I started, there was Moz, and that was about your lot. There was Moz, search engine land for news. That was your lot, and I think, the things I learned from Whiteboard Friday when I was 21, 22 were phenomenal. It was a really great, it was advanced at the time. It was at the real forefront of here is what's right and here is what's wrong. And I think we have a duty to educate clients, other people in the industry, not how to do, but how to think. And I think, digital PR is probably the biggest gray area, I think, right now. In that, I know you really want to talk about digital PR, so I'm trying my best to pivot towards that. When we started doing digital PR, or in its form then in sort of 2014, end of 2014, 2015, it was very different to today. But I think we are still in a place where it's seen as a one-size-fits-all tactic. And I think digital PR in 2024, it's an umbrella term for data-driven campaigns, for expert comments, for reactive PR, for product PR, for brand PR. And as experts, we have to be in a position to go, this is what is going to have the biggest impact for this business. And, I think the one I think we need to touch on is relevancy. And the tables have turned. I think, if I go back 5, 6 years, I held the mindset that any authoritative link, unless it's wildly removed, is a good link. And I think at the time it was. I think what we have to remember is that best practices and effective tactics shift. And, there are campaigns that we did in 2015, 2016 that we would not go anywhere near today because they're just not relevant enough. To me, in 2024, yes, we talk about links from digital PR, but at the end of the day, why do we want links? Why do we want mentions in the press? Because it builds the reputation of our clients sites. It turns a business into a brand. If people see you enough in the press, if people see you've been featured here, featured there, then people learn to trust you. When people trust your brand and see your brand, they then see you on the SERPs ranking for a non-brand query. They are more likely to click that result because of brand familiarity. Digital PR isn't just about links. And, coming from I am an SEO. I am not a digital PR. I am not a general marketer. I am an SEO. I always will be an SEO. It's not just about links. Links should be a byproduct of digital PR. And when you do the things that promote your business, promote your brand, get in front of the right people and become a voice for relevant topics, the links you earn as a byproduct of that are the links that Google rewards. And my mindset has shifted on that over the past 5 years as the industry's changed. And I think, I think too many of us sort of bullshit around the fact that, I don't think we should hide what we've done in the past. Just because, it worked. These things worked 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And on the flip side, I don't believe Google will ever penalize or punish a business for building irrelevant links from authoritative publications. I think what will happen is that those links over time become less and less effective and their impact is not really seen. I can't see a world where Google would punish a site for having a questionable relevance link from an authoritative publication. I just can't see it. I think Google has tried its best and quite successfully moved away from link-based penalties, link-based algorithmic adjustments, to identify at source whether a link should count or not, whether a link should whether it should have an impact. And I think, and I'm okay with that. I think if these tactics were better than what everybody else was doing at the time, great. They were impactful. They delivered the results. Just because, it's like with anything, 6 years, 7 years, it's a long time. Things change. And I think, you've got to stay at the forefront of that, and you've got to shift as things shift. My issue with digital PR is where there's no wider SEO education. One of the things we know, I would say 90% of our digital PR client base, their primary goal and reason for engaging us is to build links. But that doesn't mean you can't go in with that mindset of links being a byproduct of promoting a business, building a brand, building reputation. They are the links that have an impact. And I think, let's not shy away from the fact that it is usually SEO budgets that are funding digital PR. But actually what that means is, as agency owners, as agency leaders, we've got a massive, massive responsibility to educate our teams on how digital PR aligns with SEO, how digital PR can be leveraged to contribute to increasing and maintaining visibility on the SERPs, not just today, but tomorrow, next year. And I think, the biggest lever we can pull right now is relevancy. And that, whether that's a link, whether that's a brand mention, whether that's a follow link, whether, followed link or no follow link, I don't care. And I think, that's not from a perspective of not knowing, in an ideal world, every link would be a follow link. And I say that in an ideal world as an SEO. Step into the realistic world, and it ain't going to happen. It's unnatural. If the Daily Mail is no following all of their external links, that's not just me or my client who's getting no follow links from the Daily Mail. That's every other brand as well. Every competitor is in the same position. And I mean, my take is that, having spent a lot of time diving deep into Google patents from PageRank onwards, going back 20, 25 years, no follow being made a hint rather than a directive, to me, I think was what we needed to know. That there are situations when Google knows, we get into the whole concept of seed sites and, the distance of a link from one of these trusted seed sites in a seed set. And yes, we're getting quite techie, we're getting quite complex into the workings of Google's algorithm, but I don't think we need to, as SEOs, we don't need to understand them in that much complexity to be able to say, right, okay, we have enough evidence to suggest that as a PR, as an SEO, if I've got the chance of a link on the Daily Telegraph, the Guardian, the BBC, I don't give a shit if that's follow or no follow. There is enough evidence out there to go, that is building reputation, that is building trust. And I think, we're at a place where the follow, the no follow argument, the link, no link, it's getting old, it's getting boring. And I think we're at a point where I'm happy to sit down with anybody and go, look, I think the old school way of going, follow links are good, no follow links are bad, it's gone. And I think, you have a challenge as a service provider, as an agency, on you've got to balance it with quantifying success. And I think, there's that, it's difficult when, a lot of our clients are engaging us for digital PR and digital PR only. They've got in-house SEO teams. How do you quantify success if you're not doing it on the number of pieces of coverage that are earned? And I think, there's a debate, there's a debate to be had. And, we're doing a lot of work at the moment. We brought a data scientist in last year to join the team to do a lot of work around sort of modeling what a great link looks like from a perspective of, does data say that this link is likely to have an impact? And we've got a duty to go above and beyond like that. But I think, at the top level, it's relevancy. If we're landing relevant coverage, yes, ideally it will link. Yes, ideally it will be followed. But if we get a brand mention from the BBC, we only have to look at the work Google's been doing around the knowledge graph, around understanding entities, to know that Google's aware. We're in a point in 2024 where if there is a brand mention supported by the right signals, Google knows. And whether or not that's used as a ranking factor, again, I think we're getting too deep into this. Google rewards businesses that have built a positive reputation. Yeah. A lot of brands that rank, a lot of the brands that people get frustrated with, have spent years and years and years building reputation. Why should a business that starts tomorrow, why should they outrank that site? And yes, there's nuances. Yes, there are. You then come onto the thing that, you then get onto that discussion and that, debate on, okay, well, actually, as a small, agile business, you can build reputation faster than some of these giants can maintain it. And I think, there's all these considerations, but at the end of the day, if your SEO strategy, if your digital PR strategy is aligned with positively building a brand's reputation, then you're doing the right things. And I've yet to see examples of consistently doing these things, and consistently in one industry looks very different to consistently in another industry. There's not many examples of people doing these things and not being rewarded. And I think, that's where it's hard to hear, it's hard to hear sometimes for businesses. I would not like to be a startup today trying to disrupt a sector. I would not like to be in it. You are at a disadvantage on the fact that Google's been the key player for many, many, many years. I'm certainly from an SEO perspective. And I think that's where, would I recommend SEO for a startup on a limited budget over, depending on the business, some businesses would be better off nailing a TikTok strategy and building a brand that way and then visiting SEO. And I think, it's not the right marketing channel for every business right now where they are on their journey. And I think, the days of that being possible are gone. And it's hard to hear.
Yeah. Well, everything you're saying there, it's so, when you strip it right back, it just seems obvious.
It does. And I think
it just seems obvious. And I think from my perspective, when I'm looking from an outside in on digital PR, and I've dabbled. I'm nowhere near an expert on digital PR. I've dabbled and I've done some good stuff, but I see most of the digital PR industry just concentrating on, well, how many links have I generated? But what should the industry be focusing on as the metric of a successful digital PR campaign?
And this is where it, as I said a few minutes ago, this is where it gets so hard because, as agencies, as service providers, we are asked to demonstrate our impact or demonstrate a return on investment, demonstrate what success looks like. And I genuinely believe that you can, my personal opinion is that link numbers alone aren't the best way to measure success. But as an agency, as a service provider, you are also a little bit at the mercy of what other people do. The fact that, digital PR is still in its infancy. I think it's a challenge, and it's a challenge that I don't think anybody yet has got right. Because, if you think about it from my perspective or our perspective as an agency, if we are working with a client who is engaging us to run digital PR activity, and we are not responsible for their tech SEO, their content strategy, wider parts of their growth, we can't be held fully accountable for organic growth. Why? Because a dev could go and leave a no index tag on a page. That page could be de-indexed. That's not us. So actually being held accountable, or, being held accountable as a measure of success, unless you are controlling a full strategy, is, in my opinion, unfair on an agency. If you are responsible or have control over a full strategy, it is a very, very different picture. But when you are only doing part of it, you then have the fact that we can go, we can go and earn 20 links, 20 great links that we have every confidence are going to be rewarded by Google. But a competitor could go, okay, we're going to triple or quadruple our investment and we're going to outpace. Now, it doesn't mean we've not performed. And again, we're getting into the specifics and the finer details of why link numbers alone aren't the... Links are a means to an end. Links contribute to organic growth. And I think there comes a point where it is, what we're talking about, it is the hardest thing. And I don't think anybody has the right answer. We've all, different agencies have different ways of doing it. But I think in an ideal world, you have to start breaking it down to things like, one of the things or I would always recommend saying, if you're analyzing the impact of digital PR, is to say, right, okay, what pages did we earn links to? If they're commercial pages, great. If they're not, you look at the informational page and where we internally linked through to. Let's say we've got 5 pages that we've directly or indirectly earned links to. Go and look over the last probably 3 to 6 months. What was the growth in organic traffic, impressions, depending on where you are in a business's life cycle? What was the growth you saw for each of those pages that we were influencing with links directly or indirectly? How does that compare to the site's average? What that means is you can start to isolate out, okay, well, we earned this group of links. Some of them linked directly to these pages. Some of them were passing link authority indirectly via internal linking. And we saw growth on this page, let's say, of 50% quarter on quarter or year on year. The site average might have been 20%. You're starting to get into a way that you can go, we're breaking it down a bit more granular. And I think, a lot of things in SEO should be broken down a lot more granular. Looking at things site-wide rarely tells you anything useful. Start to break it down more granular, and we can start to have conversations and say, right, okay, this group of pages that we directly or indirectly influenced via link authority saw a growth of X, and this was X% higher than the site's average. And I think it comes down to who is owning an overall strategy. There should be someone in any business owning an SEO strategy. That's an agency, great. If it's not, if that's somebody in-house, if it's another agency, there has to be somebody directing, I am responsible for growth. As part of that growth, I need links. I need authority links. I need links on these topics from this type of sites. And I think, in all honesty, all too often, agencies, digital PRs, they work the wrong way. Rather than going, what are the business goals? And, I'm not, at top level, that's going to be money in the bank, revenue. Waterfall that down to, okay, to hit those goals on the average order value conversion rate, I need this many sessions. Okay, then break that down more granular. What are my different options for driving that increase in traffic I need? Okay, let's say you break it down to go, right, okay, based on click-through rate averages, we can model that actually, if we can, and again, we're talking about link numbers the same way we could talk about keyword rankings. They're a means to an end. But I think, you then go, okay, if I can increase the average ranking of these 200 keyword variations that this page is visible for, based on click-through rate averages in this sector, I think it's Advanced Web Ranking that have a really great breakdown of click-through rate by sector. Don't apply global averages, use location and industry if possible. You can start to model, well, if I increase this page or page group, I'm not a big believer of focusing on single pages, but focus on at topic level. If we can increase the average ranking of this, and this, we expect to get this much traffic. Then you break it down and go, the best thing any SEO can do is take either a seed keyword, a more granular, a long tail keyword, a page group, and go, why am I not ranking? Why is this site not ranking higher for this keyword or this group? Only then can you go, okay, well, when we analyze and reverse engineer what's ranking on the SERPs, we have a link gap, we have a supporting content gap, we have tech issues. Only then can you confidently go, this is what I need. The challenge you get in digital PR is if you are being engaged to build links, who is owning that overall SEO strategy to go, I need links on this topic or on these topics, internal links to these pages? You get into a gray area. And I think, one of the things that we're working really, really hard on over the past year is to work closer with clients who maybe don't have that in place to go to see that biggest impact. We're proactively asking clients every quarter, what are your keyword growth goals? What are the page groups you're targeting? Where, and some will go, we just want links, and it's an opportunity to educate. So how to measure digital PR success is something that I can't confidently answer, because I don't think anyone has yet figured out the right solution. There are many solutions, but I think it depends on, at the end of the day, it's money in the bank. But you then break that down into, well, where do an agency's responsibilities, who's responsible for what? And I think, that is not saying we're trying to get out of accountability. It's not that at all. It's about going, if we're being engaged and left to, not even left, we're very proactive on this, but, left to build links blind, who does it sit with? And that's a question I'm going to leave with everybody.
Yeah, well, the time has totally rocked on.
Yep.
So the only thing left to say is, what conversations would you like to have with people, and where can they find you?
I would love to have conversations with people who want to think about search differently, who are, who want to work backwards from their business goals and figure out what needs to be done to drive that growth. Often that's digital PR as a contributing factor. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's content. Sometimes it's tech SEO. But one of my big priorities this year is to sort of change the mindset of as many people as possible that SEO is too frequently looked at the wrong way. It's, it's not worked backwards from real business goals, and it should be. And, I think when we do that, we are in a very exciting position. And I think, if you don't know where you're going, how do you know how you're going to get there? So I would love conversations with anybody who wants to talk about their search strategies and how to maybe look at it differently and prioritize for growth. And, I've seen it mentioned a few times in a couple of books and stuff recently, this whole term of stop the rot, stop doing things that aren't working, aren't having an impact, and focus your efforts on what is working. Find me on Twitter, X, Brockbank James, and find me on LinkedIn, or drop me an email, james@digitaloft.co.uk.
Brilliant. Well, James, many thanks for your time today.
Having me.
Best.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.